At a policy level, education and health are very, very similar in dealing and discussing with local councils, with state government and with federal government. So it was a natural progression for me to work out of Education City and then also focus on Health City.
And the beauty of the Cancer Care Centre is that people want to be treated locally, and I think you and I know that's what makes it so important to this community, is the fact that you live local, you get to have your treatment local. You don't have to drive into South Brisbane, you don't have to drive to Ipswich.
We're starting to talk to scientists around when the temperature increases, whether it's a 0.5 of a degree to 2 degrees, those traditional foods, medicines, plants, wildlife, how are they going to be impacted? Which ones aren't going to be there? So it's sort of sombering now to start having those discussions.
The other thing that I was bullied for was being Aboriginal. I'd hear things from other students after the weekend asking how much petrol I sniffed on the weekend, and it was just a lot of negative stereotypes, which was really hard because that's who I am and that's my culture, and I am proud of that.
I'm going to be blunt too. When you were there with Nick had concerns about you. He was contacting me and says, I'm worried about Naren.
Yep.
He was saying, is it true that you had snacks in your bag?
Yeah.
So that was one of his concerns.
Absolutely, I did. I would hide them. I would have chocolate biscuits. I would have lollies. I would eat them in the toilet.
I remember my first state game. I walked into the South Australian dressing room with a fast food packet, breakfast packet, and the captain, Jamie Siddons, looked at me and just looked at the packet, and he had a few choice words, but they basically said, don't ever bring that stuff into my dressing room again. And I learnt a very quick lesson then.
My name is Terry Carney. I am the Chief Executive Officer for Education, Health and Smart City Enterprises with Springfield City Group. So in the context of my arrival at Springfield, Education City was already established. We had a number of schools, a university in its fledgling years, and we're looking to cement a TAFE college in its operation. Within Health City was 52 hectares of land. It was treed at that stage with a very clear vision of what would like to be developed over time going forward.
Health City itself, how important is that as part of the Greater Springfield idea and project?
Don, the reality is we have 3 key employment economic precincts within our CBD. So governments of the current era refer to them as knowledge precincts. So we have an education focused precinct, we have a health precinct, and we have an ideas precinct standing for innovation, design, entrepreneurship and the arts. Now the context of those 3 precincts in reality of establishing a new city is to create the jobs, right? And very clearly focus this city to have its own economy and be able to contribute to the state and to the nation. So the reality of Springfield is we've set a target of creating 50,000 jobs in the life of this development. So we aim to have a job for every 3 people that live and work in Springfield. So the reality of that is, between education, health and ideas, innovation, we would expect to establish about 35,000 positions over the next 15 to 20 years.
So is it a case of build it and they will come, and those professionals, those health professionals?
No, it's not. It's a really good question. A lot of people believe that. But the reality of Springfield is you need to build it as people come. And that is a challenge. Master plan communities worldwide, and especially in the Middle East at the moment, and in China, have had a history of they're built first and then the population turns up. The reality here, this is a commercial proposition. So Springfield City Group, previously Springfield Land Corporation, has set about, and in the first 26 years, has established the city framework as we have it now. The context of that is you develop the city infrastructure first, then you start to work with the residential component, and then At the same time as the residential, one needs to be focusing on the employment base. So the employment base in Springfield initially is always about construction, retail and finance. The reality now is we're moving from that early development stage into what Springfield will be renowned for going forward, and that is the pillars the city is designed around of education, health and IT.
Projected population is 115,000 by 2036, so what health entities will be coming to Greater Springfield to accommodate that population?
Don, it's a very good question, and the population in some ways is a red herring. So let me explain what I mean by that. At the moment, we are 40,000 people strong in Springfield itself. The reality, but in our services, is Springfield, Greater Springfield is a destination. It's a destination for 3 corridors, one to our west, another to our east and another to our south. Those corridors, so currently we are servicing over 200,000 people that choose to use Springfield as their destination, their services destination for education, for health, for retail, and with the advent of the rail for transport and a link through Brisbane CBD.
The Mater Private Hospital, how hard was it to get them to come on board and come out here to, well, the Greater Western region?
Yeah, it's interesting. When you work to establish 3 precincts and have an economic base to the foundations of the city, you look in each of those precincts to find a tipping point. In education, the University of Southern Queensland was the tipping point, and it created the impetus for Education City to develop. Mater Health Services, Mater Misericordia Hydro Limited, at that stage were very, very keen in their mission to come and service the communities of this western corridor to Brisbane. So it's not difficult in opening the conversation about whether people should come and if they're interested to come. The difficulty is then working out the wherewithal about the development, what they need to do. So the Mater did significant planning. They have a master plan and an ADP approval from Ipswich City Council that they could establish up to 1,200 beds in Health City. The reality of future medicine and future hospital services may be that that number is not achieved in the way that we would expect a hospital to develop, because I think hospitals of the future will be very, very different to the current, to what we understand a hospital to be now.
At stage 1 at the moment, when can we see the future stages and when will it be complete?
Right, so to answer in reverse order, when will it be complete? I think never. The reality is hospitals need to be dynamic, they need to be growing, they need to be adaptive, and they will do that going forward. Where are we now? We're at stage 1. We have 80 beds. We have a full cancer care centre operation, the only radiation oncology service between Toowoomba and Brisbane. So it is servicing people with cancer and other disease within this corridor and being able to come through and stay here. Mater have just done a clinical review and they've announced that they expect the next stage in 21-22 and then the stage after that in 25-26. So very clear plans for expansion. Lots of other issues to be dealt with and considered on the way through, but there is a clear delineation now of when they will be the next stages. And those 2 stages should bring us through to about 500 beds.
How proud do you get, Terry, when you drive around seeing all this construction? Because there's a lot of money that's been spent for this particular project, especially in health.
So, Don, at this point, $15 billion has been spent and has been invested in Springfield. By the end of the development, projections are that will be the other side of $80 billion when it's fully developed. I think for me, as a person who's spent my main career in education and have worked a lifetime in human services, it's been a very pleasant experience to come and see things develop out of the ground. So I've really enjoyed the development side of Greater Springfield, But most importantly, what I've focused on is the community building side. We're establishing and creating a community, and in doing that, you're challenged by what are the services they require, what's the economy that needs to be created so they've got jobs, how do you design and put in the essential services so it is a community beyond equal. And that's really been the concept of the master plan. And Maha Sinathambi and Bob Sharpless are the best community developers that I've ever had the pleasure to be working with.
Wujal Wujal is in East Cape York. According to census, we have a population base of 284. Our shire is the smallest shire within Queensland. It's only 68.9 hectares. As a shire, we had to purchase freehold blocks outside our shire to make sure we had enough social housing for our mob. We've done our own head count with Queensland Health Environmental Health as part of our environmental health scan the last 2 years, each November, just so that we've got consistency there. We're at 683, so already there's an undercount. The big issue that we're sort of noticing a lot is around population data, and then also how do you then use other data sets to help us get a real detail on what some of the main issues are. We know the last 12 months we've had a lot of issues with young people dying of chronic disease related issues. We've had issues around heart attacks. We're also starting to notice even the impact around climate change impacting on community. We're starting to see different type of skin conditions, presenting. The challenge for us is, how do we plan for the next 5 generations? So we've started looking around climate adaptation strategies as a council. We've built our own weather station and river monitoring. We're starting to talk to scientists around when the temperature increases, whether it's a 0.5 of a degree to 2 degrees, those traditional foods, medicines, plants, wildlife, how are they going to be impacted? Which ones aren't going to be there? So it's sort of sombering now to start having those discussions, and that's going to impact on us in terms of how we survive as a culture, as a community. So those are sort of the real things. Food security, energy security is a huge issue for us, particularly during wet season and also during bushfire season. So how do we plan for that, particularly for a lot of our mob that are chronic disease that might need dialysis or on respirators, that sort of thing. Yeah. We've signed a disaster management MOU with our northern shires, so Cook Shire and Hopevale Aboriginal Shire Council, because we've got more close connections. We're working on our relationship with Douglas Shire to the south, but in saying that, we've sort of tried to be a bit more strategic around looking at other strategy partners that could potentially help us. So if we're talking about building resilience within the community, particularly to deal with disaster, we've started partnering with 51st Battalion in terms of Army Reserve training. How do we tweak the generational unemployment, so those mob that are going through job network providers, whether it's My Pathways, CEA or others, how do we tweak that so that we can give them those skill sets to be resilient, and to be more employable? How do we open other opportunities? So for your viewers out there, the difference between Indigenous councils and mainstream councils, we do a lot of womb to tomb stuff, everything from run kindergartens to help people bury their loved ones. But we also pick up a lot of the social services. So we run the community banking, community post office, hack and disability service type functions, community radio, all those kind of things that we run. We can't generate revenue from rates. We're not allowed to under the Act at the moment. So everything we get is all grants generated. So that's one of the projects we're looking at the moment, is how do we actually build the workforce for tomorrow. We have been looking at that individual support qualification. We believe, particularly given a remote area, has unique needs. That's why we're very keen to look at trialling the certificate for an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health worker training, particularly for those ones in there. We have also as a council become an incubator for business, whereby we're trying to generate those community people that want to run their own business. So for example, if your disability package is, X amount of dollars, you want to actually employ somebody to do your yard maintenance, for example, we thought as a council, because we run businesses, to actually help people become, the entrepreneurs of tomorrow, and potentially could, be employed under the NDIS. The other issue that we're finding is the referral pathways. We need more support, and we need a bit more structure around how our mob can actually be referred and be assessed. So particularly with the allied health professionals. So the project we're looking at is actually having a senior connector role. It has to be a senior connector role to be able to negotiate those referral pathways for potential clients. At the moment, we're not really too sure, because we haven't done enough of the assessments to actually identify how many we have people that would be eligible for NDIS. What we've done as a council, we've actually employed 2 senior elders who, so we have 3 traditional clan groups that we recognise. Gulgyalanji, where is actually our current footprint, town footprint, Wukunungal, and also Jalanjiwara, which is sea country area. So our 2 senior cultural advisors actually are the conduit between council, agencies, and also our traditional owners in terms of their cultural safety requirements. So we've really, and then that's something I took from my role when I was an Aboriginal health worker. It was always around cultural safety practices. So we make sure that that's front and centre of anything that we do. We've got a long way to go. Based on a nutrition data research program, I think Apanipima or Punipima had run, we're the 3rd fattest community in Cape York, but we walk everywhere, so it's obviously to do with the issue with the food, the type of food that we're getting or have access to. So it goes back to that food security, getting the right kind of food security. If we've got bad dental, the fatty foods are the softest foods, so of course a lot more people are going to eat those kind of things, because that's what's most readily available in the stores. So that's the challenge for me. So being a bit more forward in terms of how we negotiate fresh fruit and vegetables that are reasonably priced for our mob.
My name is Kellie McDonald. I'm 24 years old and my mob is Madandanji from Roma. This is my health and fitness lifestyle journey. When it comes to health and fitness, I really think that people kind of misconstrue being healthy and being fit. A lot of people think of being physically fit. They look at people and they think she's skinny, she's slender, she's fit. But health and fitness is so much more than just the physical appearance. It's about your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, and your social health. This is my story and my journey and everything that I've been through up to this point in my life. And unfortunately, it hasn't all been positive, but you need to go through the negative experiences to come out on the other side in a more positive light. So I'm going to take it all the way back to my high school days. When I first started high school in grade 8, I was a competitive swimmer and I was a swimmer for 10 years. And my best stroke, or my favourite stroke, was butterfly. Due to being a butterflyer, I had a swimmer's body which was incredibly lean, and then I had this broad upper body, and I guess you could say that I stuck out like a sore thumb compared to other girls in my grade. I was also in the sports excellence class at the time, so I thought it was a really good opportunity to be surrounded by like-minded students who really loved sport and valued sport. But unfortunately, this wasn't the case. It opened up a door for me to be bullied about my shoulders being broad, masculine. It also opened up another door for me to be bullied a bit about being Aboriginal. I heard things about my shoulders like, are you on the rugby league team? How much do you bench press? And now that I reflect on that situation, it doesn't sound that bad, but when you're a 13-year-old young girl who's just started high school and you're just trying to fit in and people are picking out something that you really can't change, and they were picking out something that I've pretty much done my whole entire life, which was swimming. And it was hard at the time to kind of digest what they were saying to me. I'd go home to mum all the time and I'd be crying and I said, "Mum, I don't want to be in this class. Can you do something about it?" But at the end of the day, I knew that I couldn't change. I couldn't change my shoulders. It kind of got to the point, which sounds so silly, but it got to the point where I was kind of bringing my shoulders forward so I didn't look so broad in the upper body. So all of that happened, and I guess because of that, I don't think the people thought it was a big deal at the time, but I do reflect on it, and it does impact the way that I did look at myself, because I thought I was, I don't know, perceived as more masculine and I wasn't feminine compared to the other girls in my grade. The other thing that I was bullied for was being Aboriginal. I'd hear things from other students after the weekend asking how much petrol I sniffed on the weekend, and it was just a lot of negative stereotypes, which was really hard because that's who I am and that's my culture, and I am proud of that. And I'm proud to be sitting here today talking about my health and fitness journey and how far I've come in my 24 years of life. So being bullied brought a lot of body image issues out,